Awake, 2021.
3 days ago, the whole world suddenly lost power, and electrical appliances gradually became unusable. Even more strange was that from that day on, everyone had trouble sleeping. Even a plant person, who has been lying down for 10 years, wakes up. At this time, Mary did not sleep all night, because she thought she had insomnia, should look for drug. Dealers did not expect the price of tranquilizers to spike. Several times before, she goes to find her friend, who works in the hospital. But he seriously says that, now not only her but everyone has insomnia. But even more frightening is that, the sedative has no effect. Even the human anesthetic cannot fall asleep. But Mary didn't believe it because her daughter could still sleep as usual. Her friend was very surprised. It turned out that the government searched all day but only found an old woman who could still sleep, prepared to conduct research on her. Mary is afraid that her daughter will also be examined. Immediately drove the car home. The army stopped next to the house. When he got home, her daughter was nowhere to be found, and the son said that his daughter and grandmother had gone to church. Mary quickly gathered her things, but the more rage flared in her brain, the more out of control she became. She arbitrarily found a phone number and read it twice, then suddenly wrote down 10 numbers, but all were wrong. As a former military medical officer, she knows that, with 48 hours of continuous sleep deprivation, people begin to lose the ability to think. If you don't sleep for 69 hours, you will have hallucinations and problems walking. Continued insomnia. Organs begin to fail until the heart stops beating. This time, her friend suddenly rushed in and wanted her to take her daughter to the laboratory. Mary and her son escaped through the back door, at which point some people lost control of their emotions and robbed the pharmacy. It is not easy to get to the church. Mary's daughter is standing on the podium. Mary saw that everyone wanted to sacrifice her daughter. At this time, her friend reminded me to take him to the lab. Agitated guards shot at him. During the chaos, Mary quickly brought her to children to escape. When she calmed down, it was Noel who felt he should take his sister to the lab. If it weren't for just a few more days, everyone would have fallen asleep. That Mata alone could not have survived. Her son's words woke her up, so she decided to find an old car to go to the laboratory. She hadn't slept for 56 hours and started getting dizzy. Consciousness also becomes extremely bad. Everywhere on the road there was the sound of cars crashing. Only Mata slept well. On the third day, they went to the library. She told her son to wait in the car, while Mata and I went inside find map. But as soon as she entered, she began to teach her daughter how to use a gun, when Noel suddenly appeared and asked her why she pointed the gun at him. Missing sleep for 69 hours, Mary began to hallucinate. She knew another phone number. The phone number this time had 10 digits, but she wrote one number missing. 96 hours later, the world is half dead. Mentally ill police released all criminals. Mary and son were stopped by criminals on the corner. She immediately fired a shot at them, who expected only one bullet left in the barrel. In this time, when there was very emergency, there was a criminal. He drove to Mata's place and called her to quickly get in the car. It turned out that this guy often suffered from insomnia, so he was still awake like a bird. They decide to go to the government lab. If they find an old woman who can sleep, maybe they are researching a cure for this disease. Now the car is out of gas. Mary took the opportunity to teach her daughter how to use the principle of getting gasoline from a tractor. Although she don't know how Mata can sleep, in a few days everyone will be dead, so she had to teach her some survival skills. In the evening, she even taught her 10-year-old daughter to drive. Her consciousness seemed to have begun to falter. On the 5th day of the sleepless nights, the three started talking nonsense. Suddenly, the road ahead was blocked. If you look closely, there are a few people hanging upside down from the tree. A bunch of people out of control rushed to break the glass. Mary immediately stepped on the gas, and they escaped. At dawn, they finally reached the laboratory, but the psychic gatekeeper is extremely good. Maybe they found a cure. At this time, a man went out to inject drugs. It turns out that this is an anti-inflammatory drug that can only temporarily stabilize the mind. Mary sensed something was wrong, told the two children to hide in the woods. I sneaked into the laboratory alone. Unexpectedly, the old woman lost sleep because of all kinds of experiments, but now is very weak. Mary asks her to take care of her daughter and secretly let her go. It turned out that Mary had long known that they could not create an antidote. As long as this old woman can be saved, relying on her daughter has a chance to survive. Suddenly, a female doctor appears to disrupt her plan to save lives. Mary could only leave when a familiar car drove up to the guard station. Unexpectedly, the criminal wanted to continue living, so he betrayed and handed over Mata. Everyone was arrested. The doctor injected Mata with a certain amount of anesthetic. She closed her eyes and slowly fell asleep. The doctor was overjoyed and immediately took Mata's blood for testing. The old woman was tortured by the experiment and was about to die. But the doctor still did not let her die, continuing to use a pacemaker to bring her back to life. At this moment, a female nurse suddenly muttered to herself and began to hallucinate. 150 hours without sleep. The soldier treated the pine cone that fell on the ground like a grenade someone threw at him. Immediately frantically opened fire. The shrill sound of gunfire made many people lose their minds. The doctors and nurses were shot one by one. People started killing each other. The female doctor asked her colleague to inject her with a dose of doping, but the exhausted colleague forgot to remove the air in the syringe, causing the female doctor to die on the spot. Mata took advantage of the chaos to run out. Mata found his brother, but Noel's spirit was in turmoil. He plugged the tweezers directly into the large power cable, causing him to be shot away. At the crucial moment, Mata brought along the electric shock machine the doctor had just used. But she didn't know how to use it at all. 3 people were electrocuted. In the morning, Mata slowly woke up, her mother still glaring at her. At this time, she discovered that Noel was slowly waking up. Turns out he wasn't dead and slept all night, but the mother couldn't take it anymore. At this moment, Mata suddenly thought about the day the whole world couldn't sleep. She fell into the water and lost consciousness for 1 minute, and about what happened to her brother. Maybe you can only go back to sleep after dying once. The 2 children immediately drowned their mother in the water. Just then, she stopped struggling. The 2 children immediately pulled their mother ashore, performed CPR, and finally she was able to breathe again.
I Accuse, 2003.
Diana was sexually abused by a doctor after going into a coma, but when he woke up, he tricked that it was just an illusion. A lot of people often have this problem. Before leaving, he advised her to go home and rest well. But Diana felt that what she was going through was not a coma. She went home trying to remember it, but under the influence of the anesthetic, Diana was unable to piece together the pieces. Only when he picked up the underwear did the marks on it prove it was real. Diana decided to take the evidence and went to the largest hospital to check on the doctor. The conclusion was that she had indeed been sexually assaulted. Diana immediately reported this to the police, who did not expect the police to say there were no traces of resistance on the body. Diana therefore could not accuse the other doctor of coercion. Moreover, he has been working in this town for a long time. David always proved to be a kind person, often volunteering. Therefore, he is very popular with everyone. The police don't believe he did it. Diana said that yesterday she found out that her boyfriend was with a girl, so she was upset. Both of them got into a fight, causing Diana's hand to hit the glass and hurt. That's why she went to the doctor for stitches. He said it was to inject her with painkillers, but it was actually an anesthetic for coercion. Diana still remembered some memories, told the sheriff. In the end, he was reluctant to investigate, but he didn't seem to trust Diana at all. Diana came home and ran to the bathroom. She tried to wash her body before setting off for revenge. The police came to David's clinic and said they needed to question him. David was extremely surprised. This was the first time he had encountered this since he entered the profession. Originally, the other girls must have drugged and harmed, so no one remembers anything. David lied that day to relieve the pain. Diana should be injected with anesthetic. Maybe she had a side effect, so she remembered it wrong. The police, seeing that the doctor was reputable, still believed, but still asked David to check the DNA just to be sure. When he saw this, he quickly used the excuse of having a patient and called for blood later. The police then inquired about the nurse in the hospital. Knowing that day Diana came to stitch the wound on her real hand, he again inquired from Diana's boyfriend, proving that Dr. David was not lying. David soon prepared a tube of blood and had the nurse stick his name on it, then went out to give it to the police. But the police said, "I need to see you draw blood. Maybe you don't trust the doctor at the hospital." Confused, the policeman let it go. Just like that, David successfully outmaneuvered the police. Of course, when taking this blood sample to check, the results of Diana's DNA were not the doctor's name. The day the policewoman came to see Diana announced the results in front of everyone, making everyone think she slandered the doctor. This made Diana extremely angry. She angrily drove to the police station. "I don't believe the test results. This time, obviously the way the other policeman works is definitely not right." The sheriff, to calm the angry Diana, had to call the policeman to get the name of the nurse who took the blood. The police said he has a clinic with the best equipment. "Why are you trying to push such a nice person into the mud?" Diana was extremely annoyed with the police doing this. The police chief had to ask David to test the DNA again. Unexpectedly, he immediately agreed to take blood in front of the sheriff. Unexpectedly, David did some small tricks before drawing blood. Just like that, the blood sample just taken back has a problem. David then goes to Diana again, pretending to be the victim, begging her not to do so to blackmail him. Very quickly, the results of the DNA test did not match the doctor. The policeman scolded Diana angrily. Now, the sheriff doesn't trust Diana anymore. Because he witnessed the entire blood draw, he considers Diana to be an evil woman. In the end, Diana became a criminal in everyone's eyes. Everyone looked at her with a hostile look. Furthermore, she was also fired. After this incident, Diana locked herself in her bedroom, tortured both physically and mentally, leaving her desperate. Father, out of love for his daughter, decided to take Diana out of this painful place to a new environment. Diana began receiving therapy, but getting rid of that obsession was difficult. Diana was mentally tortured every day. The other perverted doctor was happily enjoying life. He even started aiming for the next target. Diana's side, after a period of therapy, is finally a little better than before. Dad advised her not to be too stubborn. Diana also began to shake and doubt if what happened that night was really just her imagination. Who would have thought that? When Diana moved to a new house, the neighbor girl asked her sister, "Why did they move here?" Diana's sister responds, "Because her sister did it." These words pierced Diana's heart. She had to prove that she was not the one who harmed the doctor. Diana immediately returned to town, asking the police to investigate the case from the beginning. But the police said that, without new evidence, there could be no investigation. Because to find evidence, Diana spent money, hired a detective to investigate David's whereabouts. Unfortunately, he found out, so he was very wary of Diana. Then Diana went to see the clinic nurse, hoping she could take her side. Diana replied that if person was sexually abused, her daughter, would she still be silent? This sentence made the nurse begin to shake. Finally, the nurse gave Diana a list of young patients who had examined here. Diana followed the address to find a girl's house. Sure enough, this girl had the same problem as Diana, but when she heard about the confrontation with the doctor, she was afraid to close the door. Many other girls are like that. More than 50 girls have been harmed, but no one wants to repeat this disgusting old story. At the same time, the detective masquerading as a patient comes here. He successfully obtained a sample of David's saliva. The detective took the letter for a DNA test, but unexpectedly, there was a lot of phlegm in the saliva, so it was impossible to give an accurate result. With no other choice, the detective must find the girl the doctor hangs out with at the bar, hoping to get the doctor's semen from her. Hearing this embarrassing story, the girl immediately refused and left, and Diana had no choice but to steal that girl's lip balm. Accidentally pressed the car horn and made a loud noise, almost being discovered by David. But fortunately it was okay. After taking the sample, they immediately went to test the results, and the two samples completely matched. Diana brought the results to report to the sheriff. Receiving this evidence, the sheriff also began to feel more respect for her. The controller considers this evidence though valid, but it was obtained illegally, so this evidence cannot be used before the law. The only way now is to get David tested public again. Seeing that, David's lawyer made a request. If the test results this time do not match, then Diana must publicly apologize to David and never disturb him again. But everyone is still too young with this doctor's slyness. He is a magician again. When drawing blood, in the presence of the chief of police, the coroner took David's blood, but it wasn't his. Very soon, the blood sample was taken for testing. The results, once again causing Diana to collapse completely. The two samples did not match. Diana ran to confront David, but only received threats from the lawyer. Diana barely knew how to bring this guy to justice. The police are also extremely deadlocked. Like Jiangshan is easy to change and difficult to move. David has just won the case, has continued to step in the same path. Today, a beautiful girl came to visit David. In the evening, he went to the hospital and went to the hospital room and abused this girl. The next morning, the police chief received the good news that the other girl came to report the case, alleging that she had been abused by a doctor last night. This turning point makes everyone see hope. The other girl, like Diana, couldn't remember much, and her body didn't even have a trace. The sheriff told Diana to testify in court, hoping only to convict this doctor. Because, in a row, there were two girls reporting. So the police immediately stopped arresting him, this time to make sure he didn't cheat the forensics. Do not take blood, but go to get hair, even take the lining of the mouth for testing. Now, David couldn't calm down anymore. Then the police were suddenly searching his house. They discovered a lot of blood tubes that he prepared in advance. The forensic side quickly analyzed the DNA, and the results showed that the two gene samples completely matched each other. Soon, the first trial arrived. Everyone was present in the court, but the doctor is confident. He has a good lawyer. Diana bravely stood up to testify, denouncing him and at the same time telling about the extremely miserable days because of her obsession. Everyone sympathized with her, but David's lawyer argued that the DNA test results only proved that the two had been in a relationship. Moreover, there was no wound on Diana's body, proving that when Diana did not protest, it was impossible to accuse David of coercion. The trial is paused. The victory is in favor for David. To return to the trial later, David reverses that it was Diana who seduced him at the time, both of them voluntarily. Seeing that he was too much, the controller couldn't stand it, but stood up and directly questioned him. Why didn't his 3 DNA tests come up? Moreover, why did he claim that he was not in a relationship with Diana in the first place? Faced with 2 difficult questions, the doctor was completely silent. Without waiting for him to answer, the controller directly told him what tricks to do to trick the test results. Prove that hiding yourself has abused many girls. At this time, David countered that because he had a high status, many girls wanted to approach him. Fear of being blackmailed. He had to be on guard, so he took the patient's blood through a tube, then cut his own hand and thread the tube right over the bloodstain. So when doing the test, the blood drawn is the patient's own blood. This falsification cannot be accepted after being provided by his colleagues about the amount of anesthetic he used. Every time a beautiful girl came to check, the judge convicted David of abusing narcotics and committing acts of harming to many victims. So he was sentenced to life in prison. Diana finally breathed a sigh of relief. It took more than a year of struggle to finally bring the doctor to justice, prevent him from harming other girls in the future, because not everyone has the courage to stand up and denounce after being attacked.
Hidden Figures, 2016.
Catherine's first day at the space agency. As she entered, a man threw a trash can at her. She was considered by them as a cleaning staff, who would have thought that this black woman, from childhood, was a child prodigy. By the age of 10, she had completed the entire high school program. Under everyone's contempt, Catherine calmly walked over to her table, seeing that the secretary was stunned for a few seconds and then said, "Catherine is not welcome here," advises her to prepare mentally to leave. Earlier, Catherine also received a warning asking her to wear a skirt above the knee, no jewelry, only a simple necklace. There had never been a black employee working here before. "Don't make me lose face." An angry colleague threw a pile of documents in front of her and without hesitation made Catherine check the data for her. The director hopes that Catherine's arrival will help the team ensure that there are no errors in calculating the numbers, but colleagues have black ink on most of the important data and consider this a secret that she is not allowed to see. What Catherine did not expect was that this building did not have toilets for people of color. Going to the bathroom, taking up most of her work time. In the evening, Catherine had to work overtime, checking all the data sent back to Harrison. But the opponent directly threw it in the trash. Because this statistical time was no longer valid, much injustice awaits Catherine here. At the shared office, Catherine borrowed only 1 cup, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. The next day, there was an extra pot of coffee on the table, along with a hot water dispenser, clearly marked for people of color. There's nothing inside the teapot, not even hot water poured into the teapot for her. Today, a colleague threw the file in front of her again, and warned Catherine that these jobs were reviewed by 2 actuaries. "You just need to glance at it." Catherine looked helplessly at the document in the light. It was hard to see the blacked out lines below. Catherine calmly walked to the blackboard, climbed the stairs and began to calculate the numbers. She quickly completed the problem, then quickly run to the west building 800 meters away to go to the toilet. Here, the perfect solution has astounded all actuaries. This was all too true and no one wanted to admit. This was calculated by Catherine. At the office, Catherine was asked how she was able to figure out such complex numbers. Harrison, full of praise for Catherine, was somehow able to calculate the outcome based on the numbers that had been blacked out. Catherine explained that she had seen important data blacked out in the light. Harrison also tried and true to what she said. Since then, he looked at Catherine with different eyes. The director asked her name for the first time and asked all employees from now on not to blacken the numbers. Must disclose all information to Catherine for her convenience. Information television station. The Soviet Union successfully launched a spacecraft into space. That means the US has completely lost this space war. The space team faces an unprecedented challenge. Harrison believes that the staff under him are not experienced enough, and from now on, everyone has to work overtime and work at full capacity. In such a stressful work environment, Harrison discovered that Catherine frequently left her position. Today, he scolded Catherine in front of everyone. Unexpectedly, her reply was, "No toilet for me. I don't have one in this office building. Colored people are not allowed to use the restroom in this building. I had to run more than 800 meters to get to the restroom in the West building. I work day and night like a dog, making coffee in a kettle that none of you want to touch." Harrison was astounded by this answer, knowing he had to do something. So he tore off the sticker on the teapot, smashed the white's toilet sign. You can use any room you want, preferably the one closest to the desk. This was the first time Catherine had received respect. In 1961, Navy Commander Alan Shepard's launch was launched into space on the spaceship Freedom 7.to become an American astronaut into space, then returned to Earth safely. This is a great achievement in the US aerospace industry. At the same time, in July of the same year, after the defeat to the space team Freedom Mix 7, the space mission team continued to face a dilemma. Today, Harrison brought Catherine to attend a high-level briefing at the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. The moment Catherine entered the conference room, everyone's eyes widened in surprise. The people here are all top leaders of the United States. Harrison introduced Catherine and invited her to sit down next to him. The topic of this meeting was the Freedom 7 spacecraft's landing site. Horizon asks how fast is the orbit of the spacecraft around the Earth. Everyone immediately turned over the lookup document. 17,544 miles per hour was Catherine's reply, without looking at the document. This tremendous speed is enough to prove the difficulty of their work. People then went on to ask Harrison if he could accurately calculate the landing range. At this point, Harrison suddenly handed the chalk to Catherine. In front of the senior leaders in less than 5 minutes, she had convincingly calculated the landing area quickly. She won the trust of the military and the astronauts. Catherine once again proved her strength. Catherine's computational speed became a savior for the aviation team, trusted by all senior leaders, including naval commanders and astronauts. 2 months later, Harrison called her into his office. Given the ubiquity and accuracy of computers, under the direction of the superior, in short, there is no need for actuaries in this department anymore. When it was time to launch the rocket, Harrison discovered that the data on the computer was wrong. This astronaut was the member of the meeting that day who assessed Catherine's ability to surpass the computer. He didn't want to be dominated by that cold machine. So offer to let Catherine check the numbers. As long as she says they're fine, I'm ready to go. So Harrison immediately sent someone to call Catherine. Everything was prepared. Hundreds of employees were wearing protective gear. Just wait for Catherine to give the correct result. On this side, Catherine accelerated the data reconciliation, finally finished. Crazy Catherine hugged the documents and ran to the space mission group on the way through countless obstacles, but after delivering the documents, she was locked outside. At this point, Catherine felt extremely lost. As she left disappointed, Harrison suddenly called her back. In front of Catherine, he made a phone call to inform the astronaut the exact location of the landing pad. Sometimes a machine without such emotions can hardly be trusted, the astronaut said. Catherine handled the calculation a few decimal points more than that burly steel machine. I completely trust this metric. Please help me thank her. Gentlemen, let's fire this missile. Just like that, the spacecraft successfully entered orbit, landed after flying 3 times around the Earth. The landing position perfectly matched the position Catherine had calculated. Harrison expressed gratitude to Catherine. Just like that, she continued to cooperate with the space mission team. Together, let's begin the upcoming lunar exploration. Thanks to Catherine's help, the United States succeeded in becoming the first great power to put a man on the moon, open a proud history page for the country of flags. The space agency considers Catherine to have a historic role, being one of the first African American women to become a NASA scientist.
Lean on Me, 1989.
This school is hell on earth, regardless of the teacher or anyone who heard about it. They could only shake their heads in disgust. All the students in the school are thugs. It's normal to fight to the point of bleeding. They even teased the teacher and stripped the girls for no reason, but no one dared to dissuade them. Drugs, illegal trade in banned goods also often take place at the school gate. So it can be said that only God can save this school. School teachers can also be targeted by students. It was all due to the weakness of the teachers and principals that made them so corrupt. Rochelle tops the school rankings in New Jersey, but from the bottom up. New education regulations have been introduced, in which a minimum of 75% of students in the school must pass a test of basic skills, otherwise they will be severely disciplined. By comparison, last year, Rochelle only had about 38% of all students who passed. Today, the city's president comes to work with the management, because if the target is not met, the opponent will be far behind in the upcoming election. Clark was a very dedicated teacher 20 years ago. He was the principal of this environment. Although the style of dress is quite picky, the teacher always creates games that integrate into the lesson that makes students extremely interested, and the atmosphere in the class is always vibrant and happy. However, one day, Clark had a conflict with the administration over teaching methods. They didn't want to reform education, so decided to fire him. Since then, the environment has seriously degraded in terms of facilities and education quality. As for Clark, after cursing the board of directors, he also went to find a new place to live, to plant seeds for the future. With no other choice, the Rochelle school administrators have to personally go to the elementary school where Clark was working to invite him to reform the school. However, Clark refused because he was still not content with the contradiction 20 years ago. He also knew the real purpose of this proposal was to save the mayor's vote. At this point, by provoking the general, one of the admins pointed to Clark's face and said that he hasn't done anything good in this life, so try to do well. Because it not only helps the mayor, it saves the younger generations in Rochelle who are lost. Any delay would be like making them criminals for the future. The next day, Clark wore a very elegant white suit to his alma mater as the new principal to talk to the teachers of the school. A teacher continued to talk about what he had been trying to do until now. But Clark didn't listen and told him to sit down. Clark said that if the people here were really talented and dedicated, he wouldn't be standing here. And later, when there is any meeting, people just listen. Do not comment on anything. Next, Clark asked all the teachers to complete a list with the names of students who were disruptive and selling drugs in the school by noon today. And the housekeeping team has to clean every nook and cranny before tomorrow. Clark then re-elects the head of each department. Then say, if anyone does not comply, they have the right to resign immediately. He also did not bother to retain those who were both weak in expertise and disobedient. From now on, there will be no democracy here, but Clark's word will be the law, and there is only one master here. After establishing order and showing majesty before the cadres and teachers, the new principal took the stage and the students rioted. Everyone had a cigarette in their mouth, and the girls were dressed ridiculously. Clark immediately went to the microphone to restore order, but no one paid attention to what he said. A whole bunch of rogue students, assembled from a list, were sitting in the back. They even dared to laugh and joke with the new principal. Although he was very patient, from the beginning to now, he announced that the students on the stage, from now on, will be permanently expelled, then call security to drag them out. Even though he almost got punched in the face, he still stood solemnly, without hesitation. Then say directly to the students sitting below, if you don't change yourself, the next time you get kicked out, you will be. It is said that this school died 20 years ago and the students here are just ghosts. So you yourself will be my soul, and I want you to rise from the dead, to show outsiders that you deserve better. If you don't succeed later, don't blame your parents or the color of your skin, but admit your mistakes and take responsibility for your own failures. Clark added that there are 110 days left until the basic skills test, so students who stay at school have only one goal. It's about learning and doing what you want to do in this life. During the parent meeting, Mrs. Beerus, the mother of one of the delinquent students expelled from school, stood up and questioned the principal's drastic action. Clark, after listening to her presentation, he leisurely approached and said, "Our grandparents used to have a saying, a worm makes soup, but this school has 300 worms. So as the principal, this school has 300 worms. I have to destroy them to save the rest. 2,700 students." Clark's sharp words silenced Mrs. Beerus, and everyone applauded the new principal's eloquence. The next morning, Clark came to school and happened to see a schoolboy sitting in the yard. So he approached to inquire. It turned out that this was the boy Sam, belonging to the group of disruptive students who were expelled from school yesterday. But Sam tells the principal that he fired him by mistake. In fact, this boy was seduced by his friends, smoked and played around. But in his heart, Sam always wanted to study properly, so that later he could work and earn money to support his family. Sam promised the principal, "I'll do my homework and not mess around." Clark wanted him to swear that he would quit smoking and his useless habits. The principal said, "Do you know how smoking affects your health? It will make your brain shrink slowly, then gradually become stupid. Instead of killing yourself slowly, let's jump down from above. Finish once to avoid harming your parents." After Sam nodded in agreement, Clark gave him one last chance to start over, but he will keep an eye on you 24/7. Thanks to Principal Clark's reforms, the environment has become more orderly. Even the canteen has now been cleaned up so students can have lunch and rest after school. While everyone was having fun, Clark dragged a sloppy boy's head to the center of the dining room. He openly criticized this style as showing disrespect to the opposite person. Next, Clark called to students and asked them to sing Rochel's song, then force everyone to listen from start to finish. The next morning, the principal came to see the music teacher and asked her to practice her students singing the school song by heart to make them proud of Rochel. However, the teacher wants to focus on preparing the students to participate in the upcoming city-level music competition. As such, he did not fulfill his responsibilities. So, Clark called the music teacher to scold her, and she was no ordinary person, daring to disobey the new principal. Clark forced the teacher to immediately cancel participation in the contest and devote time to the school song, but she didn't listen because the choir had gone through many months of hard work. At the time, Clark was even more upset that no one had informed him of this, then turned and left the room. Clark's rude behavior angered many teachers in the school. But no one dared to speak up. Only a young teacher dared to speak directly to the principal, but he didn't care, just asked the secretary to write a letter to dismiss him. When I heard that there were 2 male students fighting in the hallway, Clark immediately ran over and used a megaphone to slap the thug who was holding a knife to scare everyone. Turns out he was one of the thugs who had been expelled from school earlier, but he infiltrated here and fought with the students in the school. From there, the principal ordered security, locking all the main and back doors during school hours. The next morning, a schoolgirl named Kenisa came to Clark and said that her single mother is about to kick her out of the house. The principal personally went to Kenisa's house to inquire about the matter and learned that this mother had been pregnant with the girl since the age of 15. So now she wants her daughter to be independent. So she could start a new life. Clark saw this and offered to help by finding Kenisa's mother a good-paying job so she could make a living while taking care of her daughter. As a result, her daughter feels secure about going to school, without having to think about where to stay and what to do if she have to live alone. Because of his educational reforms leaning towards extremism and authoritarianism, Clark made the front page of the local newspaper. But no one understands, how can we succeed if we want to revive an educational environment without strong measures? The next day, the police agency received a report from the people that there were students buying and selling drugs in the school. So they immediately rushed to control but were strongly prevented by the principal. He insists that he banished all the scum a long time ago. He also attacked the police with a baseball bat. Later, Clark discovered that young Sam and his friends were gathering in the toilet but refused to clean it. He thinks these kids still don't know the school song. So the principal made the children sing to receive the next punishment. Unexpectedly, they sang together very smoothly, but the lyrics were edited. He asked who taught them to sing wrong. The children then said that Miss Power had taught, so Clark immediately went to the music room to confront Miss Power. The principal pretended to be serious, but he really liked the change. Should immediately appoint Miss Power as head of the arts department. Never before had people seen Clark so cheerful and friendly. However, when the principal returned to the office to receive the letter announcing the exam results, the number was even more terrible than before. Clark shouted at the secretary on the spot, then immediately summoned all the teachers and volunteers at the gymnasium to ask them to come to the students' home for tutoring. Clark asked if anyone would like to stay to help with homework and review assignments. Please raise your hand. Seeing him so strict, no one dared to let go. After that tutoring campaign, students at Rochelle became more active and eager to learn, as well as participate in extracurricular activities. Since then, Clark has been loved by more students and teachers than before. But Mrs. Beerus went to report to the mayor that Principal Clark had used chains to lock every door in the school. She threatened that if he couldn't do anything about Clark, she would then personally lead the parents, whose children were deported by Clark in protest. Hearing that, she was also afraid of influencing the upcoming election, so he discussed with the sheriff. After completing the objective of the basic skills test, Clark will be sent to prison. A member of the management team eavesdropped on the conversation of two big bosses. So he immediately notified Clark to deal with it. Clark immediately summoned all the teachers and said that if the police chief came to the school, the security guards had to announce on the radio code 10.so that the teachers immediately ran to open all the chains on the door. It was not until Clark went out that the secretary ran after her and poured out all that she and the students had to endure for so long, that he is an authoritarian man who just likes to do his own thing without caring about people's feelings. He never acknowledged their merits, nor thanked or encouraged his subordinates for a job well done. The next morning, Clark invited all the students to the lecture hall and began his lecture. Before the students start taking the most important test of the year, he thinks that, from the outside looking at the students in the school, they will say they are poor trash, nothing more, nothing less. But all that will change in just an hour and prove to those bastards what you yourself can do. After that, he also did not forget to say thank you sincerely to all the teachers who have devoted themselves to these wonderful students. As it turns out, his hard work and strict rules are for everyone. All the worst things are also taken in by him, just to expect them to get better day by day. Then, Miss Power sang the song, Lean on Me, to encourage the students, making them enthusiastically sing along. While students are taking advantage of every minute, every second to do the test, the police came to arrest the principal, under pressure from the obnoxious Mrs. Beerus. At a school board meeting, she insisted the school should be taken over by the federal government. Because if Clark leads, students will never raise their heads. However, other parents voiced strong objections. At the same time, thousands of students flooded the streets to protest for Clark's freedom, demanding freedom for his respected teacher. At this point, Mrs. Beerus still didn't want to give up, but walked out and said that she would find a better principal for the school, but doing so only made them more agitated. Little girl Kaniza came out saying that Clark is not only a symbol of Rochelle, but he is also the only father who understands the hearts and beliefs of each student. When seeing students angry with Mrs. B. Russ.so, the principal stepped out, stabilized the order, and asked the students to go home to wait for the test results. It was at that moment that Clark's secretary took the letter and gave it to him. In it are the results of the test in the morning. The principal boldly announced that all of Rochelle's 2,700 students had passed their final exams, making everyone burst with joy, and the stubborn Beerus had to bow her head and retreat. In the end, the tireless efforts of teachers and students paid off. Clark took the speaker and declared, "From now on, no one can look down on you anymore. This is a great stepping stone for you to find your own path. This future is yours. This life is also yours. Live it to the fullest and no one can deny it."
Paradise 2023.
In the future, people can exchange their lifespans for money, and a company called Eon owns the technology. They will test the recipient and donor DNA. If the two match, the person's lifespan can be passed on. Main character's name is Mark. He is trying to convince the 18-year-old to let him sell his 15-year-old for $700,000. With this money, he can help his family leave the refugee camp and get citizenship. Although he didn't want to, but in order to help his parents and be able to marry the girl he loved, he agreed. Mark then left the refugee camp and returned to the company. Mark immediately went to the convention, where he was named Employee of the Year. When he persuaded organ donors to give away a total of 276 years of life expectancy, the president of Eon Company named Sophia appeared. She informed everyone that they had just saved 15 frail old scientists. Now they are healthy to back to work and contribute to humanity. On the other hand, 15 scientists couldn't believe their eyes when they saw them getting younger and younger. However, that joy did not last long when a sudden employee killed them all. he attacked only those 15 people, and their family members and staff were unharmed. This staff member is a member of a terrorist organization named Adam, which opposes the sucking of human lifespan. Today's system is turning people into pets. So this organization always finds a way to fight this system. Sophia was very upset when this happened. She replaced a new security chief named Snow with 16 years of counterterrorism experience. Mark returns home to his wife Elena. The two are living happily in a lavish multi-million-dollar apartment. Although is paying in installments, but Mark is still doing his job well to this day. The following weekend, the two returned to visit their husband's parents. Before entering, Elena told him to yield, but the two still argued. When Elena's father opposes the system and his work as president. As for Mark, he considers this a legitimate money-making business, and he doesn't have to cheat anyone. Everyone is willing to give up their longevity for a new life. Elena also understood for Mark. When they approached the house, they were surprised to see that their apartment was on fire, especially Elena. She was very scared. Police later claimed that the house was set on fire by the two's candle. But Elena remembered that she had extinguished the candle, but the scene proved it, and they had to accept it. Police said they would not be covered by insurance. Go to the bank, will foreclose on the second mortgage to pay off the $2.5 million debt owed. When the house is now gone, only then did Mark learn about the second mortgage. In fact, his wife had to mortgage her age before they could buy the apartment. She thinks they will pay in full in the future. It's just legal proceedings. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? To repay this debt, Elena will have to spend 40 years age of her life. Later, when Mark and his wife were about to leave, the police also stopped them and forcibly arrested Elena for fear that she intended to escape. Mark tries to say that he will do whatever it takes to save her. The next day, Mark went to the president of the company Sophia to beg her for help. Since he was Employee of the Year, Sophia finally told him to send in his resume. She would think about it. The next day, Mark received no reply from Sophia. When he went inside, everyone was preparing to suck Elena's lifespan. They didn't let anyone see Elena. When Mark saw an employee open the door, he tried to run inside, but was stopped by Sophia's secretary. In the room, they read the court's verdict against Elena, and then she had to accept the punishment. Elena tried to plead, but no one noticed, and they just kept doing it. Hours later, Mark brought his wife home. They now has to move into a rundown apartment. Symptoms will appear from now on. Then, Elena woke up. She immediately ran to the mirror to see that she was very old. Her hair was also a little white. Continuing a few days later, Elena officially became an old woman, and Mark continued to the company to find Sophia. However, he only received a notification that he would be promoted to manager, nothing more. Seeing Sophia take the elevator, he quickly ran after, but was stopped by the secretary. Mark tried to ask why she didn't help him. For Sophia, $2.5 million is just a small thing, but she said nothing and just walked away. When they got home, Mark showed affection for Elena, but she just thought he was pitying her, so she pushed Mark away. Suddenly, Elena had a stomachache, and when she was taken to the hospital, the doctors informed her that she had miscarried. Turns out, she pregnanted before, but sucking away her lifespan cost them the baby. Then, to help her get back on her feet, Mark took Elena to meet her parents. At this point, the father does not blame Mark, but thinks that it is the system he is operating that makes Elena like this. After listening, Mark seemed to wake up. He went to buy a gun and 2 fake passports for 2 people. After that, Mark stalked director Sophia. When I saw her walking into the cemetery alone, Mark sneaks in from the back door. Approaching Sophia, he was surprised to find her much younger. Sophia tries to call for help and runs away. Then Mark caught up with her and knocked her down with an electric whip. Later, Mark takes Elena to a barn where he tells her that Sophia has took 40 years age of Elena's life. Now Mark has contacted an unauthorized clinic in Lithuania. You two will go there to take Elena's age back. Although Elena was very scared, now there was no other way. On the other side, the secretary and Snow arrived at the scene. They quickly realized that Mark was doing this and went to the warehouse. However, when they got there, everyone had already left. While waiting for the computer to find them, Snow and the secretary chat, thinking that everything matches up suspiciously. Mark's house burned down, and the bank quickly confiscated Elena's age, giving it to Sophia. But the secretary says it's none of his business, and they only know how to find the missing people. Minutes later, the camera spotted two people on a ship. On the train, Mark had just given Sophia water to drink, but before he could say anything, he covered her mouth again. When they arrived at the port, the two discovered police. Surrounded there, Mark saw a family get off the train. In the end, Mark caught them and forced the husband to carry Sophia and Elena in the cargo box to avoid the police. And Mark's car captured his family. They finally escaped from that place, both leaving the other family and going to the rendezvous point. However, the other doctor has not yet sent the coordinates where they set up the illegal clinic. Only then was Sophia released. Mark and Elena were surprised when the girl said her name was Teresa and that she was Sophia's daughter, not her. Mark doesn't believe, never heard of her. But that's because Sophia hid information about her daughter to avoid kidnappings like this. Elena also thinks that they should not continue the surgery if she is Sophia's real daughter. However, Mark still insists that Sophia is just acting. They then hide in an abandoned house, and while Teresa showers, Elena realizes that she is actually Sophia's daughter, as she has no scars from previous surgery. After finding the other family, Snow's group and secretary knew where they were and led troops to find them. Sometime later, while resting, Mark and Elena are approached by a group of strangers. They are members of the terrorist group Atom, after which all three are taken to one of their bases. Team leader Atom says that Mark and Elena were Sophia's targets from the start. In fact, Sophia already knew Elena was right for her. At the time, Mark was a fundraiser sent to convince Elena to donate her age. However, Mark develops feelings for her and marries Elena. This causes Sophia to take a detour to reach them. It was she who set fire to the house, taking Elena's age, and this was not Elena's fault at all. The leader wants Elena to kill Teresa, but in the end, she didn't. At this time, outside, Snow and Secretary led the troops to the place. The leader wants Mark out to lure Sophia inside. While Mark was out talking, the people in Adam's group were hiding around, thought to have convinced Sophia, but the secretary realized this was a trap, intending to pull out a gun and shoot Mark. Suddenly, Snow shoots Sophia, and then the secretary kills him too. Turns out Snow belongs to Adam's group. The two sides opened fire. Mark ran inside to rescue Elena and Teresa. Meanwhile, they receive a message, the location of the other doctor. The two take Teresa with them, unaware that she has picked up a gun. While they weren't paying attention, Teresa drew his gun with the intention of shooting Elena. But unfortunately for her, the gun ran out of ammo. Elena deals a big blow to Teresa. Then they put her in the car and drive away. After seeing that Teresa did not hesitate to kill her, Elena decided to suck her age. Because two people have matching DNA. At this point, Mark protests and says that Teresa is not guilty. The one to blame should be Sophia. Elena didn't know if Sophia could survive that incident. She then kicked Mark out of the car and continued to the clinic on her own. Elena went to the clinic illegally and was given ages. After a while, Teresa was released. Outside, her face like a lost soul quickly. She was brought back to Sophia. Because she was wearing a bulletproof vest, she escaped death. Sometime later, Sophia promised her daughter that she would find the right person to restore her age. Teresa now says that Sophia herself is the right person. However, she refuses. And Elena is younger and has another boyfriend. Now, Mark doesn't support this system and has joined Adam's group to fight it.